Welcome in, everybody. It is another episode of the 5280 podcast. It's a little bit different tonight. There is no Mundungus in the house. There is no Glenn Hauser in the house. There is Gage and I. And we have, of course, the legend himself, Bronco Bill from Bronco Breakdown. He joins the show with us. It didn't exactly go according to plan, should we say, for the Broncos of kicking off the season, with a W, but the NFL season's here. Like it's week one. It's finally here. In fact, I think Sunday was also the kickoff to fall. So it's very appropriate for the NFL season to be kicking off on Sunday as far as the first day of fall. Before we dive in to the game, Gage and Bill, how are you guys doing?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Excited to have football back. It's just been a really fun weekend. Obviously, last night did not go how anybody planned. That injury basically shook up the entire landscape of the NFL, but doing good. How about you, Bill?
Doing good myself as well. I was shocked last night to see Rodgers go down. Got a little quick story on that. I don't know if you guys heard about this or not, but in Green Bay, there was this one sports bar that was giving out. They were going to pay for the rounds of everybody. You know what I'm talking about, Gage? Pay for the rounds of everybody that put a tab on the bar with at least minimum of 2 drinks 15 minutes prior to the game. If the Jets lost, then the house would pay for their drinks. So they're all cheering when Rodgers went down. Well, you know what? It's karma. You don't do that.
Yeah.
And they didn't get their free drinks either.
No.
No. Before we dive into the Broncos stuff, I want to remind people that if you guys are watching this on Twitter, first off, we thank you guys for watching on Twitter. But sadly, gone are the days of Periscope. Your comments that you see on there, our comments not going to be seen on here. But if you guys hop over to the MHRT Network YouTube page, subscribe, jump into our chat, and make yourself at home. We like to, of course, make you feel welcome. So thank you guys so much for hopping in. And by the way, we also super chats now. So if you guys feel comfortable jumping in and feeling compelled to give a super chat, that's entirely up to you. No pressure at all. It was. Yeah, yeah. It was frustrating. It was definitely frustrating. But I think the best way to explain this, and I'll go to you, Bill, first. I think the best way to explain it was an odd game because it was a game where you didn't have, 10 possessions, 12 possessions. We're talking a game that was I don't want to say a true down to the wire game because but it was a down to the wire game, but there were only 6 snaps between the Raiders, six possessions between the Raiders and the Broncos. So it was very limited with what Broncos and even the Raiders had. I think even the best way to explain this is time of possession had it at 32 minutes and the Broncos at 27. So for correlation's sake, that's basically that the Raiders had just one more possession than the Denver Broncos. So that's the best way to explain that. So
yeah, and that came in the fourth quarter after the Broncos went 3 and out. But anyways, going back to what you're saying, it was a strange game. But with great kudos to Russell Wilson for not throwing an interception, for managing the game the way he should be managing the game. The problem with it, in my opinion, was it's not Massey. It's who was the one that was on Jacoby Myers?
That was Mathis.
Yeah, Mathis. That guy, I don't trust that guy at all. Shutdown corner and Patrick Surtain, amazing. Offensive line, absolutely stellar until the fourth quarter when I guess they just got gassed. And then the defense, of course, got gassed in the end. My problem is this. Look at the final score, guys. What was it last year? 17-16, 17-16 this year, and not coincidentally, but a field goal kicker misses a field goal. Okay? I mean, I'm just saying,
not
guys,
at the end of the game, though. It was not
true.
Not
that's
at the
true,
end of the game.
But still, and that just brings me to this karma thing that I have. Sean Payton shoots his mouth off and says that Nathaniel Hackett was the worst head coach, and I agree with that. Absolutely agree. He had no business being there. And calls him out saying, see, you're the worst coach because you only score 16 points. Uh-oh. Don't say that, because that's what happened.
Yep.
So,
and
what about you, Gage?
so the way I saw, though, from the offense's perspective, the Raiders played a lot of coverage that basically gave Denver a lot of throws underneath. And I felt like Russell Wilson managed that well for the most part. Tim Jenkins did a Russell Wilson film study before I could, but he highlighted Russell Wilson's key miss at the end of the game. So that's kind of my one and only real issue with Russ from his performance. I thought the offense wasn't the big issue. The issue really was not being able to make those kicks. And I'm putting a video out here in a couple minutes once it finishes doing copyright checks on Denver Broncos Syndicate. Or I guess now it's just called Broncos Syndicate. We had to do a little bit of rebranding. But I'm putting a video up there saying that at the end of the day, this is Sean Payton's bed to sleep in that he made, because he's the one who made the decision to move on from Brandon McManus, which I agree with, but they were ill prepared to do so. They did not draft a kicker. Their contingency plan was Brett Maher and Elliott Fry. If you look at Brandon McManus's production, it had consistently started to decline. But again, they just weren't well prepared to make that move, and it's coming back to bite them in the ass.
Yeah, and one of the other things that I thought was a big takeaway within this was, the lack of pass rush. We were told from Vance Joseph the idea of this is the best pass rushing unit that he seems like he's coached, and maybe that's coaches speak. But when you say that thing, you want to make sure that you have the product that you see on the field, and you didn't exactly get that. And one of the biggest surprises, of course, was Drew Sanders. You only saw him on the kickoff, which we'll talk about that part of it too, which is the onside kick. But I mean, that was really the only time he even saw the field. Nothing else, like in terms of defensive packages for him, and and I think that as much as we want to talk about how disappointing it is for the Broncos and the pass rush, I think you do have to give kudos. And look, it's going to taste like vinegar coming out of my mouth, but you have to give credit where credit is due, and that is how good the offensive line of the Raiders played in order for
No, you don't.
in order for the pass rush to not win those one-on-ones, because they blitzed about 42% of the time, they just weren't winning those one-on-ones, or they weren't getting to the quarterback. And the times that you saw them get to the quarterback were blitzes probably from Alex Singleton and Josie Jewell, as a free rusher coming from up the middle. So or even a cornerback blitz rather too. So I think that the pass rush is something that absolutely has to get better. Now, I thought Joey Richards, host of Let's Talk Broncos, put it really good just about a couple minutes ago. He said, I actually really like the pass rushing room with Randy Gregory and the others. You just need to see a lot more from them than what you saw against the Raiders in week 1.
Yep. And another thing too, credit to Jimmy Garoppolo. I did a film study. He did a great job directing the Raiders protection pretty much all day. You saw him sliding the protection left and right to account for pretty much Denver's best rusher on the field at any given time. And you could look at the film and see Vance Joseph was blitzing left and right. He was sending the nickel off the edge. He was sending linebackers in blitzes, but they just weren't getting home. They weren't winning up front. The Raiders out-physicaled us in the trenches in this game. And that was something that is a big red flag for me, because this pass rush looked so dominant in training camp. What does that tell you about both the Denver Broncos pass rush and even the Broncos offensive line, which for the most part did okay? I thought Mike McGlinchey got schooled by Max Crosby, but it's Max Crosby. What else are you going to expect?
But also wasn't the entire game too.
True.
Yeah.
I know I put all the loss and pinned all the loss on the kicker, because that's pretty obvious. I mean, you get 4 points, you're going to win the game. But then again, the constant penalties that we keep getting have got to stop. And I thought with Sean Payton coming in and with his, laying down the law, so to speak, and being the new sheriff, and I don't want to take that away from Peyton Manning, but you know what I'm saying, being the new one in town, that things would be different, but they weren't. And I'm not quite sure. And I know, go back and look at it from different angles, but I'm not quite sure that was helmet to helmet on that 15-yard penalty.
Neither were really. Neither penalties were head to head. In real time, it definitely appeared so. But I think the penalties comment, Bill, is one of the most underrated takeaways of this game. In terms of the discipline, but also I think that the important thing though we have to be really careful of, and we're susceptible to it. I know Gage at times can be susceptible to it. I know Bill, you could be susceptible to it. Is we can't get wrapped up so much in week one that we're automatically caving in the season. And I think that so often when you see stuff like on social media or anything like that, you already see people calling for people's heads, calling for people's jobs. Sean Payton wasn't the right guy for the job. And I think that, you have to call a spade. Obviously, there was a lot of disappointments. From the defensive side of the ball, but there were still a lot of positives to be gained. In terms of that offensive side of the ball, when the number one takeaway, of course, is Russ, right? So, when you look at Russ and you look at his decision-making, you look at the way he operated the offense and operated within himself, talking a little bit about what we talked about earlier, those are big takeaways. So I think the most important thing is to understand that, it was disappointing. Randy Gregory, the whole entire pass rush room was a bit, disappointing. But one positive, of course, on the defensive side of the ball was that run defense. If you would have told me, and we can talk about this next, Bill and Gage, one of the things that I think is the biggest thing is if you would have told me that the Denver Broncos would have held Josh Jacobs under 100 yards and shut down Devontae Adams, kudos to Pat Surtain, the best corner in the game, not Sauce Gardner, who got burned by Gabe Davis and others on Monday Night Football. But when you do that, you have a very good chance of winning a football game. But unfortunately, Gage, right, it was that third takeaway that we mentioned on the last 5280 podcast, which was they just didn't get home.
Yep, they did not.
I'll tell you what, I'm just wondering about some of the play calling, and I know we're going to talk about the onside kick, but some of the play calling on 4th and 3, you go ahead and punt the ball back to the Raiders, and now you got to burn your timeouts, and the defense was gassed. I don't know why you don't go for it then. What's the difference? You've got to try and push the envelope. I think the reason why losing to the Raiders, not only because it's the Raiders, but losing in week 1 brings back a whole lot of bad memories from last year. And I think if we would have gotten a win against the Raiders, I think 90% of that would have gone away. Now our backs are against the wall against the Washington Commanders. If we lose that, oh, heaven forbid, we got to go to Miami, and who just beat the Chargers in LA. We can't go 0-2, guys. We can't.
I completely agree with that. Now, in terms of the game itself, I feel like if you go and look at the Seattle game from week 1 last year and this game, I'm a lot more optimistic about what I saw in this game than I did in that Seattle game. You didn't see the coaching blunders that we saw in Seattle. Obviously, we didn't have back-breaking critical turnovers in this game. There's a lot of more positive takeaways. I feel like you can see that this team has a lot of room to grow, but they also, I feel like if they reach their ceiling, can be a good football team. There's just some question marks that need to be answered right now. And I know as fans, we overreact a little bit to that week 1 and kind of be like, oh no, it's the same vibes as last year. When I look at the game, I don't see the same team and the same, I'm going to say it, quite frankly, I didn't see the same fuck ups that I saw last year that I see now. I didn't see that on tape. I just got to be bluntly honest there.
Yeah. No, you make a good point. Game to game, year to year. Yeah, you're completely right. But I think I was just basically going on the fact that we lost by that 1 point again when we had multiple chances, and then all of a sudden that bad taste comes back in your mouth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and it really triggers your memory because it's of all the 1-score games that they had last season, of course, it's gonna trigger it, and I think it's just one where it's you really do wonder, what is it going to be like, and And you know what? I really gotta say, I don't know if Richie Rich A is talking about it from the game specifically, or if he's talking like last season. But I think that's if there's one thing that I will say that's a very positive development from week one, that's not Russell Wilson or anything else, it was the play of the offensive line. Because here is a case where and this is funny, because this reminds me to a certain degree. This reminds me to a certain degree of like Alex Singleton, and I'll explain why. Alex Singleton was having a terrible preseason. Was having a terrible preseason, but then you go in and you like the moment the first game hit was the moment like he changed completely who he was as a player. You know, like the lights turned on and he earned his contract and everything. The offensive line, at least from week one, from everything that we saw, you saw a solid production from nearly everybody. Garrett Bowles especially. Bowles had a terrific game. Ben Powers had an exceptional game, except for the screenplay, but that's more of like a really good play by the defender than it was on the than say Ben Powers. But I mean, the offensive line was great. Cushenberry was fantastic. I mean, like, so I mean, like, it was just crazy to me when you look at the night and day just from the preseason to now. The offensive line, especially, so if you look at that type of performance, like it was great from what you saw from that offensive line.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would agree. Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, that P. Ryan, that guy's got some moves, man. I mean, he gets out there in the open field once he gets past the lineman. I mean, he's got some great moves. And I love the fact that Javonte Williams looked good. He didn't look timid. He didn't look scared to run. I mean, that's some positive news right there. If we can keep the O-line doing what they're doing and blocking, open up holes, we can get Jerry Jeudy back. Cortland Sutton, I mean, he was double covered all night. And so you just don't have anybody. And then we lose Dulcich. It's just, guys, one after the other. I just don't know what it is. Just boggles my mind.
I'll be curious to know, Richie, why you feel that way. Because the offensive line did look much improved. Bill, you mentioned Dulcich. Let's talk about that now. Greg Dulcich, he did come and injure his hamstring. We don't know what it is. He is expected to miss multiple weeks. The Broncos do have a very capable backup in Alberto Cuevana. Oh wait, sorry.
Oh no, we don't. No, we don't. Wait. Why? Because
that's right.
Sean Payton again.
But that's not again. Like it's.
I know you don't know what's going to happen, but still,
it's the Trinity Benson discussion, Bill. But I mean, like, but as far as the Dulcich thing, Gage, where do they go? Where do they go with the Greg Dulcich thing?
I don't know, because Greg Dulcich, he brings that unique skill set where you can line him up at tight end, you can line up at slot receiver, which the Broncos were doing quite a bit before he got injured. I mean, Lucas Kroll has some similar skills to him, but he had a drop issue in New Orleans in the preseason, and obviously he's not of the same pedigree as Greg Dulcich is. But, I mean, this is a hard one because Alberto Cuevana could have done some of the same stuff, but I'll also say that Alberto Cuevana just was not consistent enough throughout the entire process of the offseason. He got better, certainly, toward the end of camp and toward the end of the preseason, but I feel like the start that he had, it just was too little too late for Alberto Cuevana with the other guys who have emerged on the roster at tight end. But now you don't really have that pure speedy vertical threat. I mean, Adam Troutman can do some nice things, don't get me wrong, but you kind of saw it on that 3rd down and 11 play where if Adam Troutman had just broken one more tackle, he would have gotten the first down. And a part of me feels like Greg Dulcich would have broken that tackle and gotten the first down in that situation.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I know a lot of people were, from people I get text from, stuff like that, were saying, Alberto, even Mundungus said Alberto can't block, which is true. He probably can't. But, you got to have a reliable receiver in there, especially when we don't have Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler and Dulcich and somebody else got. Oh yeah, and Jerry Jeudy. I mean, you you start giving away your valuables. I mean, it's the results.
The one thing I will push back on that, Bill, is the keyword you said, reliable. Alberto wasn't reliable. That's the problem with Alberto is he just never was reliable. He had a bad case of the drops. He was a very bad blocker, but he definitely had the potential in the passing game. And it is sad. I mean, but it's also the reality is that his best game as a Bronco was against, third and fourth stringers in a preseason game, and,
yeah, I know.
And so, and that's just the reality of it. But, to that credit, it was the Trinity Benson discussion, of did Trinity Benson do enough to stay on the Denver Broncos roster? Right. But, did Alberto Cuevanam do enough to stay on the Denver Broncos roster? So, I mean, yeah, but the Dulcich injury, unfortunately, makes you talk about Alberto Cuevanam. But I'll tell you, the guy that I am so intrigued with is the guy that was an undrafted free agent, and that is Nate Atkins. I am curious to see what they're going to be able to do with him, because we talked about it, Gage, on the 5280 podcast about his versatility in weeks prior, and with them keeping, Michael Burton, who caught a first down pass and was, showing his propensity in the passing game, which obviously it was a part that the Broncos, hitting 11 different, receivers and targets, which is, a huge kudo to the system that they're running. But I'm curious about Nate Atkins and see what his role will be, Gage.
Absolutely. I am too, because he's somebody that the Broncos, he's so versatile in camp. They were using him at fullback. They were using him as like a wide tight end. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see what they do with Nate Atkins, because he does bring that versatility. And I feel like he has a nice little spring to his step too. He's obviously not Greg Dulcich fast, but he's got some nice little wheels to him, I feel like. So Sean Payton will be very versatile with how he fills this void. But at the same time, I mean, you could see a pretty clear drop off in the offensive production when Greg Dulcich wasn't on the field, especially on third down.
Yep.
Yeah. Third down, Greg Dulcich was money in that first half. And then during that last drive, James Lofton, I believe it was, commented on it when he came off with the hobbled hamstring during that 2-minute drive. And yeah, it just sucks, man, because that's such a big key part of the passing game, because again, he was being used at tight end. He was being used as a big slot receiver. Greg Dulcich could just bring so much to the table, and now Sean Payton doesn't have arguably his most versatile weapon.
Yep. The one thing you worry about with Dulcich, before we move on to our next topic, is the one thing you worry about with Dulcich is, this is his same hamstring that he injured, and so you hope that this isn't something that lingered. Now, it appears that Jerry Jeudy, who recently injured his hamstring, is on the mend and actually may be available for this game against the Washington Commanders. So if you're talking about hamstring and Bo Lowry and that training staff and training ability that the Broncos have now on that team, that should give you at least some hope that Greg Dulcich could be back a little bit, maybe sooner rather than later. It's not season ending, but he is expected to miss multiple weeks. Now, the one person who is season ending is a guy that I also pegged as an X factor for this year. We'll talk about Damari Mathis because he was another one of those X factors for me. But, but Caden Stearns, you were so excited about him. Even he himself was so, excited to have that year where he could be the starter, and he was the starter. I mean, but I'll tell you, it's one more time again where that Kareem Jackson signing, like last year, looks so much better by the day. Got an interception in the end zone, but you just felt so bad for the guy because you can see the talent, you could see the raw talent, and hopefully he can come back, stronger, than ever. But the Caden Stearns thing, like Dulcich, you just hope is not something that is going to be a big, big loss, for this team.
And in terms of, go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say, I thought I read or heard where Caden Stearns is done for the year. Did I misread that? Yeah.
He is.
Okay. Well, see, that's another devastating blow. I mean, how many more guys are we going to, have go down? So my question to you guys is it? I know you brought up Cam the fact that we have really, really good, health guys, training, conditioning, all of that. Why are these guys dropping like flies? I mean,
it's a Lauren Landau issue. Oh wait, he's not in the book.
No, I
had
don't
to do that for Mario.
Yeah, I don't understand why it's why these guys keep dropping. I mean, all across the league, but it just seems like because we're Bronco fans that we see it more here. But it also happened in Pittsburgh. They lost their not Pittsburgh, Baltimore. They lost their running back, and then you lost Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's just these guys are just going down. It's crazy.
I feel like early in the season, we almost always see like an influx of injuries. Like in week 1, it seems like you always have like a pretty long list of major injuries. But with the Broncos, man, it almost feels like this team is a little snake bit. But at the same time, I mean, Caden Stearns was kind of a fluky deal where he was going to make a tackle and it looked like his leg kind of slipped and his patellar tendon ruptured. I mean, Tim Patrick, he was coming out of a 3 wide receiver set and he just took a bad step and he popped his Achilles. I mean, sometimes just unfortunate fluky plays like that happen. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, he was getting tackled, got his foot caught and his Achilles popped. Oh wait, that probably wasn't a fluke. That was the crappy MetLife Stadium turf. But I mean, that's just kind of what happens sometimes, man. And it sucks because we as Broncos fans had to go through last year where we literally were the most injured team. And now when this influx of injuries that kind of naturally occur start to really, really take shape, I mean, that really hurts. But in terms of the role for Caden Stearns, first of all, Caden Stearns, I just hope mentally he's doing okay because this was a tough blow for him. You could see the tears in his eyes. He was pounding the turf, pounding the cart in frustration. I mean, you could see that his heart was just broken. So I hope that up here, Caden is doing okay. But just in terms of role for this Denver Broncos defense, it stings because they actually talked about this on the television broadcast when I was going back through and rewatching it. They said they were really going to use Kareem Jackson in sort of a big nickel and big dime rule, which is what we had seen in training camp and a little bit in the preseason too. So that alone is really going to suck because that really changes how you utilize your personnel. Now K-Jack's going to basically have to be back playing safety almost exclusively. I mean, maybe they could bring in someone like JL Skinner if they activate him because he was inactive for that first game, maybe a Delarian Turner Yell, but that just kind of changes your personnel groupings on defense, which sucks.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that is worth noting as we're talking about injuries, you don't know when he's going to be back, but he was on short-term IR, but PJ Locke is on short-term IR. So you don't know when he's going to return, but he will be coming back as soon, as he's healthy. So
that's gonna be huge.
I would imagine, it's gonna be really huge. So I think that it's gonna be imperative that you get something out of Delarian Turner Yell and Skinner, JL Skinner. I think, and also too, I think this is sort of leading into the Damari Mathis discussion now. And I see Richie said he got rocked and
big time.
And then obviously Mundungus chimes in with what do we do with him? And I think that this is the question, right? Because like you want Riley Moss healthy now, and maybe he's going to be available for this Commanders game or close to it in terms of maybe not this game but the Dolphins game. That's where I'm really curious. When you talk about the nickel position, Gage, like that's where I'm really curious about this because of the fact that Mathis got, rocked in his first game, Riley Moss has the flexibility to play the nickel. And so, but I think here's the twist. So does Mathis. I think people forget that. It's like when he came out of Pittsburgh is that he has this flexibility and versatility to also play inside. So what are the Broncos going to do? I mean, do they feel comfortable to put Riley Moss out there, on that outside? Or here's another twist. Jaquan McMillan was inactive. That was one of the more surprising inactives on Sunday. Is McMillan going to see some run on the outside? So I'm really curious to see what they're going to do on that boundary, if you will, and as well as, within the nickel corner.
Yep. I mean, Bassey, I thought for the most part held his own at nickel. I mean, how did you feel about Bassey at nickel? But I'm just talking like in big nickel.
Oh,
Cage,
Bassey's
that's
another one too.
Really hurt.
Bassey, and I maybe that's it. Is Bassey is the one that if you're looking at it from strictly player personnel, he's one of the maybe players that you will pinpoint that you're really kind of intrigued with because of what you saw in preseason and a certain play style that you hadn't seen in where they were playing him in safety and corner, and so they may actually have to utilize him more at that safety position and at that, and at the nickel as far as like, or maybe like being like a true rover. He doesn't necessarily have the size and athleticism as the Caden Stearns, but maybe kind of like filling, a little bit right in, maybe with being a little bit of a rover there to kind of fit with maybe what he wants to do.
I'm not sure that Massey's cut. I mean, not Massey. Mathis is cut out for to be in a zone. And the reason why I say that is on that last drive where the Broncos had to have that defensive shutdown and a punt to get the ball back. I mean, he's wide open. He just hit that soft spot between the linebackers and the safety. And I don't know why they would go into a zone in that particular play. It was 4th and 3, I believe. And Garoppolo rolled out to his right, was being flushed out, and just basically just dropped it right over the linebackers' heads, and the rest is history. So I'm not sure if that definitely falls on Mathis, but it just seemed like he just was in the wrong place at the wrong time all game.
I do feel like Mathis is a little better in man than in zone. Mm-hmm. I feel like just because of his raw speed, he does a little better in man than in zone. Would you agree, Cam?
Yeah, and I think for me, the other now that we saw it last year, so I'm basing this off of last year. But let's kind of keep in mind too, Mathis closed the season really, really strong and didn't play the at the beginning part of the season really, really hot, but he really turned it on. And it's also worth noting in a game sort of similar to what we saw with Jacoby Myers. Now, this was actually, I would say this was a little bit worse than the Chargers game. But after that game where he was picked on rather heavily, that was the moment where you really saw how good Damari Mathis can be in really any scheme. So I think I think he's definitely better in man coverage, but I think he's one of those versatile players where you could put him really with any scheme. But I think that, I'm really curious to see what he does next week, because with what we saw last year after that Los Angeles Chargers game where Herbert was just picking at him constantly, he came right back, and that's exactly the game that he finished off with game after game after game and really closed rather nice for the Broncos.
Yeah,
true. Good point.
So, Bill, we talked about Caden Stearns. I know you have something to talk about in terms of a certain number that Caden had wearing. It's not an indictment on Caden, but
no, it's not. No, it's just a coincidental thing that I brought up. Only coincidental because I really feel this number needed to be retired like years ago, and that's the number 30 that Caden Stearns wore or wears. Prior to that, we also had now it skips me. Remind me, Cam. We were talking about it before. Lindsay. Philip Lindsay had the number, and he did well for the Broncos, but boom, gone. They never used him. So I guess what I was trying to say is take away the number 30, retire it like it should be with its proper retirement, hang it up there with number 44, number 18, number 7, and then we won't have the issue again. Okay, it just seems like weird things happen because the number 30 is still out there, and in my opinion, it shouldn't be. Nothing against Caden Stearns. I just thought that was kind of a weird, I don't want to say karma, but coincidental.
Yeah. What about you, Gage?
Yep.
It's an interesting conversation, right? I mean, like,
yeah. It's an interesting conversation to have. I'm not super superstitious. I mean, I do feel like 30 should be retired. What's that?
I was saying it's the Office line, right? You're not superstitious, but I am stitious.
Yes. I'm not superstitious, but I am stitious. Exactly. I mean, but yeah, I mean, like, I do feel like 30 needed to be retired, but at the same time, it's like I'm not so superstitious that I'm going to say that that's why Caden Stearns hasn't played well or anything like that. But I will definitely agree with Bill's notion that 30 needs to be retired.
Well, and I think that there's just interesting, ways where, like, what was it? Adam Pac-Man Jones, when he came in Vance Joseph's first or second year as head coach, he wore 24.
Yeah.
He took 24. Damari Mathis, obviously, he wears number 27. And, really, there really hasn't been a good number 27, since the late Darren Williams, right? Yep. I mean, like, and obviously you go back a little further, and of course it's, Steve Atwater.
Right.
So I will say, it's a fun conversation, but it's also one where they do look weird on players when you're so used to them wearing a certain number, or and it's funny. We had this conversation at the DNVR bar sometime, talking about numbers and everything. But it's like when you are so used to a player in preseason, like Marvin Mims, for example, when you're so used to Marvin Mims already wearing 83, and he changes his number to 19. Like, what the crap? I got so used to you wearing 83. Yeah. Now I got to retrain my brain that you're wearing a new number, So it's the subtleties, I think, so it's not so much like wearing a number sometimes, like, for a number that, maybe retired or anything like that. But it's also, you're so used to that particular player wearing that number, that you just get so used to it.
I guess every time I see anybody wearing, I'm sorry, Gage, I was just going to say, the reason why I see everybody wearing, or people wearing number 30, the only thing I can think of is you better play as hard and as passionate and as awesome as Terrell Davis, because that's, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, for me, it was like seeing Aaron Rodgers, for example, wearing the number 8 got me a little bit weird. Like, I'll always view it as number 12. And like even with Caden or with Marvin Mims, like, I was writing my notes down for the game when I was watching things over. I still would write it down 83 for Marvin Mims. Like, right. I still associate him with 83.
Yeah, I think that's like the subtle reason, like a subtle reason why I like Julian McLaughlin right now. Because like, what? I mean, it's just like, it's like, obviously, he probably could have changed his number, and there's a reason why he mentioned. We mentioned on the show before, but it's like. But when you have a player that's like, no, I'm good wearing 38, you're like, okay, hey, as a fan, I love it. You're sticking to your number. I'll get used to this, and hopefully you stay with it, for the rest of you can. Raider Zach chimes in and says he agrees with what you said, Bill, that you have to earn certain numbers. And there are, I think, cases like that. I mean, so we talked about 30 earlier, right? Philip Lindsay, right? For him to wear 30, he actually got Terrell Davis's blessing.
Yes.
Peyton Manning wore 18 and got Terpuka's blessing. And
Namath was going to give Rodgers his blessing, but Rodgers chose to go back to his college number.
Yeah, I didn't know that he gave him. That's cool.
Yeah, Namath was going to give 12 to Rodgers, but Rodgers decided, no, that's Broadway Joe's number. I'll go back to my number 8, my college number.
That's cool.
And Jerry Rice wore 19 with the Denver Broncos, and he decided he'll give 19 to Marvin Mims.
Broncos legend Jerry Rice, baby.
I'm kidding, but of course, the other one wasn't Ed McCaffrey one where he gave 87 to Eric Decker, like he said that it was okay that Eric Decker wore 87. So I definitely agree that there are just certain numbers where unless you have the player's blessing or that they earned it, I agree with that. With that.
At Ohio State with Jonathan Cooper, actually, he earned the number 0 at Ohio State, and in a sense, he kind of earned it with the Broncos too. Like they talked about that. So with the new number 0, you kind of had to earn it. here in Denver, and you had to earn it in college at Ohio State, and Jonathan Cooper earned that number 0.
And it's kind of interesting because you don't see that at times in the NFL. Like in college, you see it almost all the time. Like I think, what is it? There's just some places now, like you mentioned, Ohio State and the number 0. There's some places where like they'll only hand out single-digit numbers to meaningful players that are on the football program, and those are players that are rather important to the team, and so they're going to hand out those single-digit numbers. But it's also the fact that they earn that, like they earn the ability to wear that single-digit number, or the number 0 or whatever. I am really curious. Obviously, I went to Jonathan Cooper, and I'm not complaining, but I am very curious to know what that discussion was like between Jonathan Cooper and J.L. Skinner and the decision to wear number 0.
Because I'm curious if there was one.
Yeah, if there was one at all.
Yeah. I think Patrick Surtain should change his to number 1. I know I like the 2 because it reminds me of, obviously it's easy to identify Pat Surtain too, but being the number 1 corner in the league, I would switch it to 1.
That's Sauce Gardner,
Fair
apparently.
enough.
Yeah, that's Sauce Gardner, apparently.
And that's why Sauce wears the number 1, because he'll be number 1 in his mind. But yeah, absolutely. I completely lost my train of thought.
I was gonna go with the NFL weekend. Well, it's worth fitting. It's worth talking about it. We touched on it a little bit with the injuries. That Aaron Rodgers stuff was insane. I mean, I think his Achilles injury, it made me think in my brain the what if scenario, because like if you think about it, the New York Jets basically did exactly what the Denver Broncos did with Peyton Manning. Like they put all the pieces around him, and they built that team for Peyton Manning, for Aaron Rodgers. I just think of the what if scenario. If Peyton Manning rolls out there in game 1 and in 4 snaps coming off of the neck surgery, he sustains a season-ending injury. Like, you're talking about a Broncos team that is not only bad for 8 years, but like more than a decade. Like,
we don't win Super Bowl 50. No. We don't even get to the playoffs.
Yeah, they don't build that super team without Peyton Manning. I mean, at the end of the day, the whole trajectory of the Broncos franchise would have been changed. And now you kind of think about with the Jets. I mean, I'm not going to lie, Cam, that same thought crossed my mind. Like, what if that had happened with Peyton Manning? But with the Jets, you think back to 1999, the year I was born, when Vinny Testaverde tore his Achilles. When he tore his Achilles, that was the year I believe that the Jets had just brought Bill Parcells back. I mean, that was a big year for the Jets. Rich Eisen talked about it on his show today, and it just kind of rings similar vibes there in New York. I know that the Broncos and the Jets have their little quibbles right now, but I was rooting for the Jets. And with Aaron Rodgers, again, I was born in 99. I'm 23. He's really kind of him, Stafford, and Russ are really the last ones left of the generation that made me fall in love with the game. Rodgers is one of my favorite quarterbacks to ever play. I grew up with him. So that's one of those ones for me that really kind of hit me a little bit hard. Like, I wanted to see Aaron Rodgers do well because I will always have that emotional connection with him. Like, I mean, obviously guys who grew up in like the Montana and Elway generation, they'll have that same connection. Or me. I mean, or even the generation before that.
Thanks a lot, Gage.
but like, you'll always be emotionally attached to the generation of quarterbacks that you grew up with. And for me, that was the Mannings, the Rivers, the Drew Brees, Johnny Unitas. But yeah, for me, that was that generation. And Rodgers was kind of the last one left. So it hits me pretty hard. I'm not going to lie, it does.
I saw a thing came across my phone today that says, imagine a season. We're only in week 1. No Tom Brady, no Peyton Manning, no Aaron Rodgers. That's where we are, guys. It's a whole new era.
There was a crazy statistic that I saw on Twitter. Actually, I don't even know if it's a statistic, but that ever since Patrick Mahomes has entered the league, that you've never once have seen a Mahomes versus Rodgers matchup. And because of the season-ending injury, you still won't
Won't.
ever
Yep.
see, you still won't see
I didn't know that.
a Rodgers and Mahomes matchup.
2019, they were supposed to play. Patrick Mahomes dislocated his kneecap in a game here in Denver, actually.
Yeah.
And then 2020, Rodgers got COVID, that whole can of worms.
Yeah.
And then this time around, so yeah, it's the third time. It's like the NFL's, it's like just the football gods don't want us to see Rodgers versus Mahomes, which sucks, man.
It's basically telling us that there is only one quarterback to quarterback rivalry, and that is Brady versus Manning, right? That's the only probably what they're telling us. Aside from,
will say Mahomes Burrow might get there.
Right. That was my follow-up. Yeah. But when you mentioned about Aaron Rodgers, though, it's like, I think, and obviously there's the whole hoopla with the New York Jets and everything that did happen. You touched on that. Both of you guys did, but it's like, as a football fan, I think that's where I'm looking at it from. It's like, as a football fan, you are devastated. You don't even have to be a Packers fan. You don't even have to be an Aaron Rodgers fan, but to put yourself in, like it was more severe with Damar Hamlin, but it's still like, it's the same in the sense of like, you put yourself in a situation where it's like, you see something unfold and you're just like, holy crap, what did I just see? Like, this is like, it is a true fluky moment where you saw something happen where, he's going for he's sacking him and the Achilles ruptures. And that's a fluky injury. And of all things, it's, 4 snaps in. Now, if you want to grade those 4 snaps, the offensive line wasn't great in those 4 snaps. So if you truly want to understand and appreciate how good the Broncos were with Peyton Manning, it's because they knew about protecting that investment. And so, but yeah, I'm really curious. Sports Nonsense and Whiskey chimes in with the exact thought I'm sure we're all thinking, because that Week 5 game it took a turn. Like, it took a turn, and I agree that it is a lot more optimistic in this sense, that you don't have to face Aaron Rodgers, but that defensive line scares the living daylights out of me.
Yeah.
From the defensive front especially. But, are we feeling confident, with this Jets team? I'm just saying from the Jets perspective. Are we feeling still confident with this Jets team now that they don't have Aaron Rodgers?
I will say sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I will say Robert Saleh has no. Geez. Go ahead, Bill. StreamYard delay.
It's a little delay, so go ahead. You're good.
Okay. So Robert Saleh, he has said that that Zach Wilson will be their quarterback. I don't know how much I buy that, because Robert Saleh, a defensive-minded head coach, and at the end of the day, man, if you've got an elite defense like that, you don't want your quarterback in there potentially screwing it up. I don't know how long that experiment's going to last. We could very well get to Week 5 and the Jets have a different quarterback center than Zach Wilson. At the same time, though, the Jets beat the Denver Broncos last year with Zach Wilson at quarterback. That was without our Wilson under center, but that Jets defensive line looked dominant last night. Quinnen Williams, their edge rushers looked dominant. I mean, freaking Jordan Whitehead in the secondary was an absolute world beater. I mean, that Jets defense that got CJ Mosley in the middle as kind of the glue that keeps everything together. That is scary.
Yeah. It's it's their defensive line is a force for sure. Yeah.
John Franklin Myers. I mean, it's disgusting how good they are.
Does it seem like, you feel more confident, or?
Yes and no. I feel more confident because we're not facing Aaron Rodgers with a Nathaniel Hackett connection there. I'm glad for that. Not that he's hurt for season. I just don't like, just don't like the fact that somebody ends their career, or possibly could end their career, something like that, being 40 years old going on. But I thought at the beginning of the season, I thought that the Jets with Rodgers was the team to beat in the AFC East. Now with the Dolphins being strong, I think it's the Dolphins. It could be a 1-2 punch. It all depends on how Zach Wilson performs. I mean, if he performs well, Flacco to the Jets, wow. I mean, I heard today that there's a lot of phone calls going out to retired quarterbacks to come back in the league. One of them was Tom Brady, so that would be interesting. But in all due, to the Jets fans, that's got to be a blow, because I know we mentioned earlier that would have been devastating if that would have happened to Peyton Manning years back. So it's got to be devastating. Going into that game against the Jets, I'm feeling more optimistic, but I'm still very reserved because I don't know where we're going to be at that point. I hope we have Jerry Jeudy back then. I would hope to have we could give Tebow a call.
Tebow time, baby.
No, because Tebow would probably beat us, Mike.
No, it would be boring for 3.5 quarters, and then he'll
then he'll pull it out like we did against Miami.
Yeah. I will say, this is going to sound, interesting to say, because it may be interpreted differently, but it's one of the reservations I have for Javonte Williams for the regular season. I have the same reservations for Breece Hall, and it's nothing against Breece Hall, but when you look at now, and this was one of the other takeaways I had with the Aaron Rodgers injury, is they're basically going to be turning into a 90-10 team of rushing the football and throwing. Basically run on first down, run on second down, throw on third down, make sure you're at least in a manageable third down situation. But I'm actually worried about Breece Hall. Breece Hall looked fantastic in that Monday night game. Actually, he looked like a bona fide, superstar in that game as a back. But when you are coming off of an ACL tear, and thankfully they did, sign Dalvin Cook, but when you are running these backs to the ground, it's the same reservations you have for Javonte Williams. It's is that knee that he sustained with the ACL, is it going to hold up for 17 games? That's my biggest reservation with the Jets. Is is Breece Hall going to be holding up? This week 1, fine. Your body's in much better health than it is in week 17. So I'm really curious to see what Breece Hall will be like at the end of the year.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, Dalvin Cook's going to be called on a whole lot now. Much more so than before. And I think that bodes perfectly for the Broncos, because in week 5, when we play them, if they're predominantly a run team, all we got to do is shut down their receivers. And that's
still harder said than done with Garrett Wilson. And
exactly. So, I mean, if we play the run defense like we did against the Raiders, against Dalvin Cook, I think that's definitely a positive win for us.
Let's take another NFL outlook. What were some of the other key takeaways that you thought from the NFL weekend? Now that the NFL is back, man, the NFL is back, which we're finally here on week 1. There were some disappointing losses from week 1.
How about Thursday night, Kansas? Well, that wasn't disappointing for us, but
from a strict
loses,
fan, it was very disappointing. But what were some of your week 1 takeaways from the?
Go ahead, Gage.
I mean, Buccaneers, Vikings, that's one. Baker Mayfield. Are we looking at a potential career resurgence from Baker Mayfield? I mean,
Trey Palmer, wide receiver 1. Let's go.
Seriously, man. Packers, Bears, Justin Fields did not look very good in that game. Jordan Love had some moments for sure. Had some plays where he struggled, but also had some really big moments in that game. The Browns, their defense looks legit. It really does. Deshaun Watson, not so much. Jim Schwartz, though, man, that defense looks nasty. I mean, they had the pieces, but last year. Good.
I was going to say, it's not spelled Jim Shorts, like actual Jim Shorts.
Yes. Yes. But, man, they've always had the personnel, but with Joe Woods being your defensive coordinator, that kind of held things back for them last year. It's kind of amazing what they can do not being under the tutelage of Joe Woods.
Yeah. Boy, and then, of course, the other big disappointment, you mentioned it with the Buccaneers, was the Vikings. I mean, you had the Vikings with a very disappointing loss. The Giants with just being walloped by Dallas. I mean, like that was that was crazy. The Steelers getting whooped, I would say, isn't that big of a surprise.
I got to step for a second.
That's okay. But like, if anything, it goes to show you how good the 49ers are as a football team. I'm definitely curious to see what the improvement will be like from here to week 2. The other thing was you saw a lot of rookies shine in week 2. You saw Bijan Robinson look great, as a rookie, and which shouldn't come to a surprise as no one, because some people, felt like he was the best, player, should we say, maybe overall within the draft. But what were some of the other takeaways for you, Bill, from week 1?
The Titans losing. I mean, I didn't see that coming. I thought they'd be a lot better this year. The Dolphins beating the Chargers in LA. Of course, I'm happy for that. But that surprised me, because I didn't think the Tua was going to come back as strong as he did after everything that he went through. And then the other one was the blowouts. I mean, Cleveland just destroyed Cincinnati. I didn't see that coming at all. Yeah. And then, of course, I just mentioned a while back, Kansas City losing to Detroit, in Kansas City. A lot of these surprises, I know it's week 1, but still these surprises, get me. And then Dallas just putting a beat down on the Giants. Holy
that smokes, was embarrassing.
Man. I mean, my gosh. To block the field goal kick and return it, 60 or 80 some yards, something like that. Good gosh, man.
And we want to talk about overpaid quarterbacks, man. Danny Dimes looked back to being Danny Turnovers in that game. I mean, he was not good. That Giants team, I thought they overachieved last year, and that's what they're going to do when they have a head coach in Brian Daboll, who the Broncos should have hired. I'm still pissed about that. I wanted Brian Daboll so bad. But at the end of the day, man, like, that team is in a very interesting spot with Daniel Jones, I feel like, because he did not look good in that game.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Back up on what you said real quick. You said you wanted Daboll, and they just got beat 40-0.
Well, it's
I'm just trying to figure that one out.
They were in the playoffs last year too, though.
That's true. Yeah. I'm just giving it to you, Gage. That's all.
Yeah.
Fair. No, fair. Totally fair. I mean, I kind of did contradict myself a little there, but at the same time, man, with Brian Daboll, I just feel like his coaching really helped that Giant squad overachieve last year. And this year, it may be coming back to bite them a little bit, extending Daniel Jones, but I still believe in Brian Daboll as a coach.
Yeah. Well, it also takes players too. I mean, you have to have the key players around to work your scheme and all that kind of stuff. So I do get that. Maybe they just don't have that at this point in time. But I think you're right. I think he's a great head coach. I think he's only going to get better.
Yeah. One thing I was going to get your thoughts.
Big concerns about that Giants offensive.
Oh, I was going to say one thing I wanted to. I definitely am worried about the Giants' offensive line as well. But I wanted to ask you, Gage, the rookies.
I think I lost both of you.
Nope, I'm here.
Nope, we're here.
I hear you.
I'm going to leave StreamYard and come back in.
Okay. I'll ask Gage the question when he comes back. But before we talk about that, Bill, let's take a nice little look forward to the Washington Commanders.
Okay,
not the Washington. What are you looking forward to with the Commanders game?
What I'm really looking forward to in this game is I want to see more of what we saw against the Raiders. And I know that sounds bad. I'm not talking about score-wise. I'm talking about production. I want to see Russell Wilson not throw interceptions. I want to see him manage the game. But I do have concerns in the secondary of the Broncos. We cannot allow their receivers to get that wide open. I want to see more. I don't know if I want to say aggressive plays or aggressive play calling. And I know we didn't touch on this real quick, but I'm gonna bring it up real quick. The onside kick to open the game against the Raiders, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah,
it was completely caught off guard. It caught me off guard. I thought he slipped. To tell you the truth, I thought, what the heck? And then to have it not go Broncos' way, I think was an absolute dagger to the heart. Because in my opinion, and I watched it and slowed it down, and maybe I just got orange-colored glasses. I swear he touched that ball right at the 10-yard marker.
It was close. I will say
close.
It was.
But I'll
really
tell you what, if that had gone Broncos' way, can you imagine if that had gone Broncos' way? We go down score first. Oh my gosh, dude!
They may have even had an
the
extra
whole game
possession too. Just the right.
What's that?
I was gonna say they may even have had an extra possession thrown in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So I want to see things like that. Do I want to see trickery? Maybe not so much trickery, but I do want to see something different. I want to see, maybe a fake end around or, bootleg or something to spark this team. We got to win this game, and our defense has to be 3 and out. We have to get those guys 3 and out. We have to shut down the receivers and the running game. I know it sounds like I'm asking for the world, but hey, at this point in time, we got to reach for the stars, guys. And if we fall on the moon, hey, at least we're still there, right?
Yep.
What about you, Gage?
I mean, I'm going to definitely be watching how Vance Joseph adjusts, quite frankly, because he was blitzing left and right in that game, and we still were not able to get home. So I'm curious to see what Vance Joseph's game plan is to make Sam Howell uncomfortable. And I'm also curious to see how he goes about attacking the Commanders' plethora of receivers. I'm not sure who their number 2 boundary receiver would be, because I believe they still have Curtis Samuel and De'Ami Brown, right? So I don't know who their boundary receiver would be on the other side, because obviously I think of slot really with both Samuel and Brown. So I'll have to go really watch some Commanders tape. I was going to do that over the next couple of days, but whoever's going to be going up against Amari Mathis, I definitely have some concerns about that whole situation. And what will the Broncos do there? Will they activate Jaquan McMillan? Will Riley Moss be available for this game? That is a big question mark. But in terms of what I want to see from the offense, I want Russell to continue to be able to execute on schedule. I want him to be able to make some of those nice off-schedule plays that he made. I want to see how the offense adjusts with a whole week of game planning, not having Greg Dulcich on the field, because it didn't seem like they were able to adjust on the fly to losing him very well. So that's something that I'm going to be paying attention to. The run game, I'm going to be watching to see if maybe they want to integrate some more Jaleel McLaughlin in this one, because Jaleel had a couple of rough reps there to begin, and then it felt like they didn't want to go back to the well. I want to see if maybe they want to go back and maybe establish some of that confidence with Jaleel next week. I'm hoping they get him involved, because he can be that dynamic playmaking threat on offense that we really need. We need explosive playmakers, and Jaleel McLaughlin is an explosive playmaker, damn it.
Yeah.
Well, and what you touched on from the offensive side of the ball is something maybe we didn't get a chance to touch on, a little bit, and that is the lack of big play. I want to see more of those big plays, the explosive plays, the downfield plays. Now, I will say the Cortland Sutton pass interference penalty, there was no chance he was going to catch that, so I'm not going to talk about that. But the Philip Dorsett play, we're probably talking about a much different Russell stat line, if he actually has the wherewithal to stay in bounds. And, and I kind of, I hate to use this correlation, but it's like, maybe it's the new kicker smell, the new wide receiver spell for some of these players. Like you're not used to maybe playing in the, obviously the sidelines are the same, for every single football field, but it just feels different for a new player. So hopefully Dorsett can, work on that. But I mean, like, I gotta say, like, if they can be able to get those and generate those big plays, regardless of Judy is in or not. If Judy is in, I feel much more comfortable with the ability of some of the, the big plays that you're going to possibly see with this team. And also, I think that it's possible. I don't want to aggravate, the Broncos fans in the chat or anything like that. But I will say, don't be surprised if you see somewhat of the same game plan that you did see, though, this last week. And the only reason why I say that is because
Offensively or defensively?
I'm at the offensive side of the ball. It's because the reason why is because that Washington defensive line is disgusting. Mm-hmm. Like that is a very tough pass rush, regardless if Chase Young is in there. And the fact that we were able to see Russ on the run and accurate on the run and decisive, hopefully we see a little bit more of that. And maybe that's a nice little sign that maybe we get some of those big plays too, with the vision down the side, down the sideline or anything like that. But don't be surprised if we see the exact same game plan that we saw against the Raiders. Just hopefully it's not, 6 possessions.
Yep. Sorry, go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say, I happen to think now with Dulcich out that we're going to be more run heavy. And if we can be, run heavy against the defense, I know that their defense, they got playmakers too, but if we can run the ball, we have to keep the offense on the field. We cannot have another game where the defense is out there just getting totally drained by the fourth quarter. Because if that happens, then we're staring at another L in the right in our face. So but to what you were saying though, Cam, is you're correct. We're going to have to have these receivers step up. We're going to have these playmakers, they have to come up with a game plan because we don't have key players now. And if we don't have Jerry Jeudy, they're going to double team Courtland Sutton again. And then you're going to go back to the dump off. And if we keep doing that consistently, they're going to pick up on it. We have to control the offensive line absolutely 100%. And Klutz has to make the kicks.
That's the big one. But I'm glad that Bill touched on this because with Washington's D-line, you've got Chase Young if he's going to be healthy in there. You've got Montez Sweat on the other side, and then interior is just gross with Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen. Yeah. So just like Bill said, we have to establish the run in this one. And with the run game, I thought we did a great job running the football in the first half. Second half, it kind of did teeter off a little bit, I felt like. So we need to be able to consistently run the football in all 4 quarters, I feel like, in order to win this game, not just in the first half. Yep. So if we can do that, that's going to help neutralize Washington's D-line big time because with the Raiders, it's kind of a one-man crew on that D-line right now with Max Crosby. This one's going to be a much more challenging one just all across the board. So I'm going to be watching the offensive line pretty heavily. Are they able to establish some dominance in the run game, and will they be able to hold their water on the pass rush? Because that's going to be a big key to winning is can we win in the trenches? And we got to keep Russell Wilson upright. We have to keep him upright. I know he took a couple of sacks last game. He was kind of pressured out of the pocket. I understand that happens at times, but we have to keep him upright. If we have to have any chance. So you're right. You're right, Gage. Absolutely.
And just as we mentioned it, when we went through our schedule predictions, but this is a 2-game stretch for a very tough offensive line and defensive line. Mm-hmm. I should say for the offensive line for the Broncos, that the defensive line that they'll be facing. So, you got the Washington Commanders, and then the following week you have the Miami Dolphins. So this is a tough 2-game stretch for the Broncos in that offensive line. So they have to be able to perform. But it's also worth noting Sean Payton's teams have a tendency to start slow. So I'm just letting you guys remember that Sean Payton's teams has a tendency to start slow but finish strong. Hence the statistic that I mentioned on the last show, if you guys want to go back and listen to that. But anyway, thank you guys for hopping in with us. It was amazing. Not the same, obviously, without Glenn and Mundungus in the house. But Bill, you were, per usual, you were great tonight. And
appreciate it.
So and thank you to everybody that chimed in on the chat. Ty was a new addition. Obviously, he just finished up incomplete. But Raider Zach, thank you so much for your comments. John as well. Jorge Macias chimed in as well. Just everybody, sports, Richie, thank you so much for chiming in. It was an absolute blast getting a chance to interact with you guys, obviously, in the comment section. Make sure you follow Gage. He's got the Twitter handle right there at Gage Madrid NFL. You can follow Bronco Bill at Bronco Breakdown and the show that he does Broncos breakdown every Friday. So make sure you tune into that. I obviously will be doing a Mainly Broncos show tomorrow. So make sure you guys tune into that. At 7:30 Mountain Time. We actually have 2 guests on for tomorrow night. I'm sort of looking forward to this. We have Josh Sherman and Eric V. Hill. If anybody knows people in Broncos country, they have a tendency to kind of go at each other, like as far as trolling one another, but they're huge Bronco fans, and so I'm excited to have them on. So again, thank you guys so much for hopping in with us. You guys can tune into that at Manly Broncos, same time, different time, but same bat channel. Again, thank you guys so much for hopping in with us. It was an absolute blast. So go Broncos, and hopefully they can beat the Commanders.
Yep.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.